Howdy, my name is Tyler Nance, and this is my speech called Rising Tides. So, since in about 100 years, the atmosphere has warmed up 1.62 degrees Fahrenheit. And although that seems small, it has turned into a continuous process that continues to build on it and that we need to start becoming aware of, and it's what we call climate change. So, right now, it's directly correlated with the amount of CO2 that we're putting into the air. That's caused by transportation, wildfires that are going on. It just is naturally produced already. So if you take something that's already naturally produced and you start to build it up more, obviously it's going to get even worse, and CO2 is a good job at keeping that air trapped in. So with climate change reaching its peak, it's starting to become noticed that something needs to happen. But looking at the evidence from the scientists and looking at the neglect of the civilians and also the politicians not necessarily wanting to help us and wanting to help us, seeing it from a different aspects, we're gonna dive into climate change. So it is 100% known through scientists and through data that climate change is real. From the 2020 NASA report on the study of climatology, it's very clear that over the past hundreds of years, again, it has risen 1.62 degrees, which again does not seem very big, but it's substantial considering in the last 35 years, that is when most of the heating has occurred, and that's directly correlated to the amount of vehicle production that we've had and the amount of problems that we've had as well. So it has also been known that we've had in the last 6 years, we've had the warmest records on Earth. So 2014 was the first hottest year, then 2015, 2016, 2017, they're all outproducing each other on being warmer each year. So what's going on is that the oceans are taking the heating and they're absorbing that CO2, and that's causing them to rise. And with that, it's also melting the ice caps. Ice caps have gone down a substantial amount, which I'll get to in a little bit. But the melting of the ice caps put more water in the ocean. It's actually risen up 700 meters from what it used to be. So what happens is that with those oceans, they're naturally keeping temperatures warmer, which is allowing the atmosphere to stay warmer as water is harder to move temperatures than it is. I mean, if you think about what heats up faster, a swimming pool or the air will always heat up faster than a swimming pool. It has been, again, the ice shelf has been decreasing. We've also seen a decrease in wildlife moving on. The ice shelf has decreased about 286 billion tons to 127 billion tons, which is an absolutely astronomical amount to think about. What's also happening is that the snow is melting earlier than what it used to do, and there's also a glacier retreat going on in the 6 main areas. Some are in Africa, Antarctica, South America, and the North Pole are just some examples. The glaciers are melting, and they're not actually retreating, but the ice is falling back on it. So again, just like I mentioned a little bit earlier, with the decrease in the ice shelf, we're also having a decrease in wildlife, and it's directly correlated to the neglect that civilians are having with everything going on. So with the 2018, the author was Kluger, was his last name. It's Why We Refuse to Change, Why We Refuse to Do Climate Change. And it's basically human nature does not want us to change. We want to stay the same. We want to stay who we are. I personally do not like to change up my day. I like to have a very routine day moving on, and that's the same thing. Humans learn from the previous generation, and we learn that we need vehicles on transportation. Everyone needs their own car, 2 cars if it's a mom and a dad, or even more, then you need another car if they have children. And rather than taking those public transportations, they are dumping more CO2 into the atmosphere than ever before. So other things that can also happen is that if you look at how we would be able to do that, there's no way we would be able to make like an instantaneous change. And this is what Kluger was specifically talking about in this. He said that it would be too expensive just to flip the switch right away and be able to just go, we're going to do 100% clean energy, everything right away. It would be way too expensive. With that expensiveness is going to be the resources that are going to be leaving us immediately if we do that. So things such examples of is like batteries, all the parts to make a battery. If we switch to all electric cars, we're going to run out of those resources right away. And if we have just a quick reaction to kind of go and get those. And then again, we're going to tap on that everyday citizens do not want to change. They want to keep in their routine. So everyone wants to ride the bus, everyone wants to ride the train, everyone wants to drive their car. They don't want to change up their daily routine. So it would be impossible for us to just make that switch right away. The other side that is starting to feel it is also the wildlife. The wildlife, according to the National Wildlife Association, the high temps are starting to attack the wetlands in the Midwest, and it's starting to attack the ice shelves, as previously mentioned with the NASA report. Polar bears and penguins and seals, you can switch up and go to the wetlands. Any like frogs, amphibians that are in the Midwest, they're going to start feeling the hotter temperatures, which are going to bring drier conditions, which are not going to be allowing us to have those animals around for very much longer. So the other side of the claim is going to be the politicians, the one who would be driving those changes. So if you look at the 2020 politics of climate change, it was very interesting to actually hear about some of the things going on with the most recent Trump and Biden debates that they were talking about. There was obviously some big confliction that was going on, and that is very relevant in the world today. It's divided between two parties. One party wants industry to be booming. The other one wants that industry to be booming, but with clean energy. And sometimes you just can't have both those things. So becoming part of the politics that's been going through debates, you have to pay attention to the politicians deciding if it's to gain your vote and it's not to help you, or if it's going to be to help you and try to keep your vote. And an example would be when Trump recently just pulled us out of a Paris climate change organization, and the world saw it as a very negative thing. But he was actually there to help us, because what was going on is that organization was all talk and it was no actually change. And what was going on was that we were spending hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars into this organization, and they weren't willing to do anything. However, there's also things that we can be doing that's not being done. We're not focusing enough on green energy. We are not taking advantage of things like nuclear energy and finding ways to improve that, with it being its only downfall is that we can't get rid of the nuclear waste. But we can find cleaner ways to do the energy, and those things are not being sought out. And those are the things that we need to start pushing the politicians to do, because they're just ignoring them. So seeing all the sides of the stakeholders is going to be very important. The country right now is in a very controversial time, and I would even say the globe is in a controversial time that we're not focusing enough on. We're having problems between the scientists who are stating the facts, the civilians who aren't wanting to change, and the politicians who are supposed to be leading those civilians also being split and divided as well. So it's very important in this case to learn your personal preference, and it is super important to have different viewpoints to make sure that we're able to see that argument from every side to be able to find a solution. So these are my note cards. And this is my keyword outline, along with my works cited page. Thank you.